Recently I launched a video about Volkswagen possibly being the first legacy auto industry to go bust. Then this week I reported that the Q1 2025 sales results puts Volkswagen top EV manufacturer in Europe with 13% of the market. Is VW now safe? Is the future looking bright and rosy? Or is there more happening than at first appears? I'm Dave, this is Dave Takes It On. Well, thanks to Catrin member Paul Egan, who sent us some videos of an AW Group charging station, which we're hoping to use in an upcoming video. If you'd like to support the channel, please consider becoming a member. Have a look in the description down below for more detail. Well, the VW Group is a huge organisation that dates back almost 90 years. Today it incorporates 10 different brands, including Audi, Seat, Skoda, Cupra, Lamborghini, Bentley and Porsche. It is massive and it's a very diverse group with factories in 118 locations. 24 of those are in Germany alone. The group also has manufacturing in the Asia Pacific region, North America, South America and Africa. In China, for example, it has a very strong presence through group ventures, joint ventures like FAW Volkswagen and SAIC Volkswagen. Of course, regulations in China state that these cannot be owned or run by Volkswagen. They are joint ventures, with the Chinese element having overall control and Volkswagen providing finance and elements such as design and maybe some of the components. Now, it is important to be careful about the terminology here, about the use of the word manufacturing or assembly. By definition, to manufacture is to take raw materials, you add an energy supply like electricity and manpower or machine power to make a finished component. Assembly is taking those manufactured components and assembling them into a finished product. In this case, it's a car. These terms in the media are constantly being interchanged when they are in fact totally different. For example, VW components like axles, brakes, drive shafts, they're all built in Wolfsburg in Germany. Batteries for the ID.4 are manufactured in the Czech Republic, and all of these are shipped or exported to various overseas factories. This gives maximum employment to a German company in Germany and also offers economies of scale. It's just cheaper. But also, while the idea of manufacturing everything start to finish in any one country is attractive, it is highly unlikely that any company anywhere is already achieving that. If you go back just another step and look at the raw materials, you find that even countries that do produce products like steel, like the UK, do not make 100% of their own requirements. In the UK, more than half is now imported. And much the same applies to aluminium, widely used in the EV industry. The idea that any one country actually has all the raw components to meet all their industry requirements in a complex end product is pretty fanciful. And even if one existed, today's capitalist business models would always seek out the cheapest supplier, no matter where they are located. Capitalism always looks after number one. This includes their financial backers, executives, directors and shareholders. They just let others worry about full employment and bad publicity when shutting down factories. The three biggest markets for the finished VW cars are Europe, China and the US in that order. And here we begin to see why the VW story seems to be both boom and bust. Let's start in Europe. Top-selling car last year was the Dacia Sandero. It's manufactured as part of the Renault Group in Mioveni in Romania and also in Tangiers in Morocco. The Golf was third in the list and the Tiguan was fifth. But there's a huge concern about the arrival of the Chinese. The VW main market is seriously under threat. The Chinese not only make cheap EVs, but they also make cheap PHEVs, plug-in hybrids, and cheap HEVs, pure hybrids. And the top 10 include both in high percentages. So their traditional home market is under threat and the threat's growing. Even just a few years ago, there were no threat at all. They simply didn't have the manufacturing capacity to make sufficient cars to export to gain access into that top 10 list. Now they've become expert in electric vehicles of all types, BEVs, HEVs and PHEVs, in the home market. That market is becoming saturated. They're certainly looking to export what they can, where they can. In terms of politics, the Chinese cannot export to America, so to them a large target market must be Europe. With Europe lagging in EV sales and market penetration, the primary larger target will therefore be pure hybrids and plug-in hybrids. And this is a direct threat to the Volkswagen Group, as many of their top models are hybrids and plug-in hybrids. Well, the next biggest market is China itself. The Chinese government will not allow foreign factories into China to set up manufacturing, which would challenge the local Chinese factories. So China entered into a number of joint ventures with the Volkswagen Group and others, whereby they own the company, but welcome investment, technical expertise as such, design philosophy, and a recognizable brand name. So traditionally, the Chinese have been known for not being able to design anything at all themselves, but are absolutely brilliant at copying them and then manufacturing them for a fraction of the price. Trouble is for Volkswagen that at a certain point, China's learned just pretty much all they can from the masters, in this case Volkswagen, and they can make a pretty good stab at finally designing and making their own products that are at least equal to, and in some cases superior to, what they used to make as the joint venture. Volkswagen, amongst others, have discovered that their services in China are now not wanted at all. And the Chinese manufacturing and government subsidies are at such a level that they don't really need the funds that companies like Volkswagen bring in. It is starting to look like, rather than Volkswagen using the Chinese to get cheap labour, cheap products and access to a brand new huge market for their cars, it was all the time the Chinese using Volkswagen to learn all they needed to about what the buyers in Europe actually wanted to buy and how the VW engineers manufactured and assembled their cars. If we look at the sales figures, it would appear that that period of time is now over. China's got all it needs from the West and is rapidly transferring everything to the homegrown markets. This doesn't just affect Volkswagen, because General Motors recently had to write off about $5 billion of investment that they had made into China. Likewise, it had just stopped working. The Chinese market for Volkswagen to sell their Chinese or European-made cars into is rapidly collapsing, taking out much from the European market as well. In America, while they thought they were perfectly safe with several assembly factories operating very effectively, the recent fiasco with tariffs now looks like it might have brought down that market also to an effective zero. With a 25% tariff, which at the time of making this video still applies, the cars become uncompetitive. At best, sales will reduce dramatically. At worst, they'll simply stop. And we've actually seen that as full stop in action recently, because a large number of exporters of cars to the United States have paused or cancelled future shipments. And many of those already underway en route to America carrying those cars are not landing the cargo in America. There is a growing armada of car-carrying ships anchored offshore the American coast. So out of 3 of the largest markets for VW cars in the world, all 3 are now collapsing or have come to an effective halt. Q1 2025 new EV sales figures show the VW Group achieving top spot in Europe. That is a highlight for the EV market, but please don't forget the EV market is only about 20% of the entire auto industry, and they only got 13% market penetration. It did end up beating Tesla, who had held that position for many years. It is a fascinating achievement, but does not even become close to compensating for what they've lost in China and America. And even in the European market, the impact of those cheap Chinese hybrid vehicles has not yet been felt. They're on their way. This is a problem that we find whenever anyone starts quoting figures. If you were just to look at the VW EV sales figures in Europe for the first quarter 2025, you could easily and comfortably state Volkswagen's very strong, very successful group has a bright future. If, on the other hand, you are to look at the number of ships they've got anchored offshore in America because they can't land those cars or they would face massive tariffs, then Volkswagen is a disaster. Add in the crashing new car sales involving VW joint ventures in China, and add in separately direct exports of German-made new cars into China, and the overall picture is looking exceedingly dire. And there is no easy way out of this. Tackling the European market would require Volkswagen getting much better at making and selling EVs and hybrids, and using the brand name as the single best unique selling point. I just need to try to recreate what Canada has recently discovered. That is, if you appeal to your own people, blame everyone else for what they're trying to do, just go out and buy your own products, please. Nationalism. There doesn't seem to be any way whatsoever in which Volkswagen can do anything about the joint ventures in China, nor about selling German-made cars into China. China's heading rapidly towards 100% of the new car sales becoming EVs only, and they make very much better EVs than the Volkswagen Group. It will take a huge effort and investment for the VW Group to even try to catch up with the EV excellence that already exists in China. We'll look at the American problem. That's much more complicated. Take steel, of which the main component is iron ore. Then the largest deposits are to be found in Australia, Brazil, China, India, Russia, South Africa. Now, it is true that the United States does produce some iron ore, but certainly not enough to support all of the industry that needs it, including the motor industry. So it is easy to see why manufacturers like Volkswagen cannot simply set up over in America and manufacture 100% US-made cars over there. It would still need to import many of the components to achieve a finished product, and setting up individual supply chains 100% local in each of their factories where VW manufactures or assembles is just not financially viable. According to Vice President J.D. Vance and Business Advisor Peter Navarro, the practice of importing anything that Volkswagen needs, even if it's not available or made in the US, is an abomination, and the only solution they would accept is for the whole process for making a Volkswagen car, start to finish, has to take place in America. And here they fly in the face of reality. It's an impossibility. Many of the other components, silicon chips, they're not yet manufactured in a sufficient number in the United States to support very much, certainly not all of the entire motor industry. And something like rare earth metals, they're really not to be found very abundantly in America. Canada, previously one of America's best neighbours, provided those rare earth metals. Well, in addition, dropping back just one more step, in the past, much of the electricity entering the United States was also generated in Canada. Is that electricity to be subject to the 25% tariffs that now apply? See, that's a real danger with Trump. Anything could happen. Well, VW had a great Q1 2025, certainly, and should be recognised for that, but the outlook is decidedly gloomy. The three primary markets, shrinking or already closed, nothing new is on the horizon. This is the predicament that Trump must have envisaged when he began his tariff strategy. But he never obviously thought one step beyond it. See, if Volkswagen cannot transfer the entire production of their cars 100% to the US ever, tariffs have to fail. Why on earth would any company go to massive lengths and expense to try to comply when you already know that the finished business model will still be open to tariffs? Oh, by the way, even if it wasn't, Trump could just make up a new tariff. Ha. Damned if they do, damned if they don't. The noose is tightening, and with the third largest debt in the entire world, the first place for that goes to Toyota, second to the Chinese property group Evergrande, the clock is ticking. The final straw likely to break the camel's back would be for the banks to call in some or all of that debt. I'm Dave. Well, thanks for watching this video. If you'd like access to behind the scenes content, channel meetups and exclusive videos, then please consider becoming a member today. Your support is crucial in supporting a small channel like ours.